and welcome to the Wellness with Juanita podcast. I'm your host, Juanita Nagai, an American living in Japan for 20 years. I've gone through some massive life changes and crises in my 20 years here. At its bleakest, I felt very isolated, alone, and helpless in the face of what was happening. I relied on alcohol and cigarettes to get through it the best I knew how, which worked until it didn't, and everything fell apart. I made it through with a little help from my friends, a fledgling mindfulness practice, and learning how to become my own strongest ally. I quit drinking and smoking, worked my way through my grief, found ways to forgive, created new connections, and started a regular exercise, meditation, and self-care routine. I've also become a national board certified health and wellness coach along the way, and developed a desire and passion to help others on their own personal journeys. This podcast is all about change, growth, healing yourself, learning how to get back up after life kicks you down, and exploring mindfulness and self-compassion as incredible tools available to each and every one of us to do just that. Hello, and welcome to the Wellness with Juanita podcast. I'm your host, Juanita Nagai. Today, I am going to be talking to you about fierce self-compassion. This is a kind of part 2 in conjunction with last month's episode on tender self-compassion. For those of you who might not have listened to last month's episode or be familiar with self-compassion, briefly, the 3 basic elements or components of it are 1, mindfulness. So this is the idea of trying to take a bigger picture, bird's eye view of what is actually happening in the moment or in your life. So if you get frustrated and yell at your kids, you're able to see that that is what happened. No more, no less. You don't blow it out of proportion. You don't dismiss it or deny it or try to push it away. You can see, I lost my temper and I yelled at my children. The second component is common humanity, and this is remembering or recognizing that countless other mothers throughout the world and throughout time have gotten frustrated and angry at their children. You're not the only person that this situation or this circumstance is happening to. You're not alone, and you're not strange or flawed for feeling the way that you do or reacting or behaving in the way that you do. And the final component of self-compassion is kindness. And this is when we want to offer ourselves the same kind of care and support that we would to a good friend who is going through a similar situation. And using that same example, perhaps we are able to recognize that we are sleep deprived, or we're hungry, or it's really, really hot outside and it's making our temper a little bit shorter than it usually is. But we can see the conditions that are arising to this unfortunate event and say, you know what? You're tired and you're hot and you're hungry. Let's have a cool glass of water. Let's make a snack. Let's do what we can to make things better and to support yourself and not berate yourself or think that you're a horrible parent or any of the number of common reactions that we can sometimes have when we make a mistake or when we feel like we've done something wrong or we're failing. So in essence, that is the tripod that supports self-compassion. And again, much of this understanding and the sharing of the knowledge that I am doing comes from Dr. Kristen Neff and Dr. Chris Germer and their Center for Mindful Self-Compassion. I took the live online Mindful Self-Compassion class last summer, and so that also deeply informs and supports my understanding and my own personal practice of self-compassion. So that's the kind of basic gist. So we can hold ourselves in the same kind of caring, supportive, understanding manner that we would another friend who was facing similar circumstances. But there is another side to self-compassion. That tender side is kind of like the yin. And then there is this fierce side, the fierce energy of self-compassion, where we learn to protect, provide, and motivate ourselves. Basically, we find the ways to take action, to move in the world or move even within ourselves in a quest to alleviate our suffering. There is a Buddhist concept, this idea of compassionate justice, and that's where the fierce side of self-compassion comes from. And as I was preparing for today's episode, and as I was thinking about and listening back to the episode that I recorded on fierce self-compassion a year ago, I was reflecting and remembering that I had just finished reading Dr. Neff's book, Fierce Self-Compassion. And it was so much information and so much great information. She wrote the book specifically for women. The full title of the book is Fierce Self-Compassion: How Women Can Harness Kindness to Speak Up, Claim Their Power, and Thrive. So there's so much wonderful information, and she really does a wonderful job of concisely and clearly consolidating a lot of different concepts, a lot of different ideas. And I think last summer when I had just finished reading it, I had not quite consolidated or clearly understood all of the concepts that there were within. But I found it all really fascinating, and I wanted to try and share that information. And listening back on my episode last summer, it made me feel like I was doing a bit of a book report. I was trying to highlight these different sections of the book that I thought were really, really important, or they had really spoken and resonated with me. And in the intervening year, I've gotten a little bit older, a little bit wiser. I have a little bit more experience. And recently I gave a Pechakucha talk on self-compassion. And so for those of you who are not familiar, Pechakucha is a format of 20 slides for 20 seconds each. So you have to give a very clear, concise presentation on whatever topic in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. There's no stopping the slides once they start. And in creating that slideshow and choosing self-compassion, because it is so near and dear to my heart, and I find it just endlessly fascinating, it was a really great process for me to really narrow down the heart of what it means, not only in order to share to others, but what it means to me. And so today I'm trying to intentionally release myself from this kind of educating or book report kind of a vibe and just really speak from the heart and really speak from my experience, because I can, with a little bit bigger perspective, bird's eye view, a little bit more mindfulness, can look back and see my own personal experiences, my own personal story. I can really clearly see how both the tender yin side and the fierce yang side of self-compassion have informed my journey and have shaped my experience, even if I wasn't always necessarily 100% aware that that is what was happening. So if I look back at my journey and my experience, which I have shared very openly on this podcast and throughout various formats, when I was at my bleakest, darkest hour, the dark night of the soul period, in essence, I just felt awful. Like I did not want to feel the way that I was feeling so much of the time. And I don't know if that was my higher self or some deeper inner wisdom or power. I think it was, and perhaps in combination with other things, other kind of energy and spirit and some spark of something deep within me. But that feeling of, I need another way to get through this, or maybe even just, I need a way to start getting through this, because excessive alcohol and cigarettes late at night on the deck and then just bawling my eyes out was not working anymore. It did not feel good. And I was just ready to change how I felt. And again, it was a very slow, long, laborious process. It was not easy by any stretch of the imagination. And I think it's a process that continues on today. I'm still uncovering and unearthing things that I would like to change about myself, or things that are enabling me to grow or heal in other new, different ways. But this idea of this fierce energy, even if I wasn't really aware of it at the time, was pushing me towards the positive changes that have really turned my life around. So, for example, the biggest one that really kind of harnesses the fierce energy idea, and when Dr. Neff is talking about the fierce energy and talking about it in general, she uses the analogy of a mama bear and her cubs. And it's really easy to understand. We all have this kind of mental image of, you do not mess with baby cubs in the woods because the mama bear will come and mess you up, right? So it's that kind of idea that we want to harness and use on ourselves. And I think it can be really difficult to do that. I mean, I think especially as women in Western patriarchal culture, we are taught not to stand up for ourselves and speak up for ourselves and prioritize ourselves. So it can be incredibly challenging. But if we start to think about it like a mama bear, so thinking of my own mama bear, we have some family stories that are kind of the stuff of legend now, and we laugh about them. But I can remember in 5th grade, I got some kind of detention slip. I mean, I was a very good student, so it was very, very rare. It was definitely the first one that ever came to our house. No, it was in 4th grade, because it was from the 5th grade reading teacher. Anyway, the note that she sent home basically just said, your child failed to do their homework, so they will be staying after school this day at this time, kind of a thing. It was very informative. And my mother read that, and she did not like the tone. She did not like to be informed that her daughter was going to have to do X, Y, and Z. She was very much like, this needs to be a permission slip kind of a thing. So she, instead of just signing the slip as you were supposed to do, she hand wrote a one page single spaced letter in response to that teacher. And I remember being horribly mortified and embarrassed and taking it to my homeroom 4th grade teacher, who I was very fond of, and she was a wonderful, kind soul. And I just kind of showed it to her and was like, my mom didn't sign the note. I'm supposed to hand this in instead. And watching her face change as she read it, I could tell that my mom's anger and her fierce, protective mama bear energy was coming through loud and clear. And sure enough, same thing with the 5th grade teacher. Her face was just horrified. Her eyes got so big, I can still remember. However, she changed her note, and she changed the wording on the detention slip ever after that. So in this instance, my mom's fierce mama bear energy created change. She was protecting her family, protecting her young. And so we can think about this energy as it regards those closest to us. If we're mothers and we have our own children, We probably all can think of an instance when we just instinctively guarded our children or instinctively was ready to fight, basically, like, don't mess with my kids. I will defend them. I will protect them. I think the same thing can apply with our immediate families in general. We can think about it with our maybe local community or the town that we live in or our country. All of these kind of groups that we belong to, it's sometimes easier to identify with that sense of compassionate justice when we think about others that we identify closely with. And this is where we could get into a whole thing about social justice and all of the movements in general. But I want to keep this more personal, and I don't want to go off on the kind of book report or educating kind of tangent. However, I will say things like the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matters movement, what's happening in Palestine right now, there is no reason that people should be starving to death in this day and age. And there's no justifiable reason whatsoever for doing that intentionally. As humans, as members of the human race, our hearts and our spirits rebel and rage against that kind of cruelty and inhumanity and injustice. When the George Floyd video was released across the world, my body is reacting and getting goosebumps just thinking about it now. Most of us naturally identify with that call and that plea for justice and for compassion and for humanity. And so that's one way, if it helps for you to think about that idea in general. And bringing it back to the personal level, that is the energy and the spirit that can really support us in finding the ways to protect ourselves, to provide for ourselves, to motivate ourselves. So in my own personal story, there was some part of me that was pleading for another way to live, another way to feel, another way to process and get through all of the really intense negative emotions and grieving and rage that I was going through. That rage itself was information. One, I had never experienced so much anger and so much rage ever in my life before. I think because I had never experienced so much injustice and so much pain and hurt before. So the anger is often an early warning system in our bodies saying something's wrong, danger, danger. You need to deal with this. You need to take action. You need to protect yourself. But often what happens is we kind of get stuck in that story and we get stuck focused outward on the other person or the injustice. And we can't get out of that story of just staying angry at it. There's constructive anger and destructive anger. And it's the destructive anger that we just hold on to, like the hot coal within ourselves, and it's just hurting ourselves instead of doing anything at all. It's not hurting the other person. It's not hurting the injustice in the world. It's just hurting ourselves. But the idea is if we can take that feeling of anger and take it as the early warning system that it is, then we can use it to actually do something about it, or to start to think about what are the possible actions, what are the possible things that we can do to change. And eventually, unfortunately, it took way too long for me to get out of my own story and get out of my own repeating mind circle. But eventually I was able to say, okay, what can I do? What can I change? What can I control? And that was what eventually led me to start exploring things like mindfulness and yoga and exercise and just writing and processing in earnest. And all of those things slowly snowballed into bigger and bigger behaviors and habits, and again, continue on today. But it was the anger and that fierce energy that was pushing me to start to think about what I could do to change, what I wanted to change. This is where we need both sides of the self-compassion. So maybe there's the fierce energy, the yang energy that's pushing you to doing something and to trying to make some changes. But it's really hard to do that. It's like trying to teach someone who's drowning how to swim. They might not be ready to learn how to swim. They might just need a life raft tossed out to them. So sometimes we need to just take care of ourselves and offer ourselves the acknowledgement and the recognition that we are really suffering, that we are really going through a really hard time, that we do need some simple, basic emotional regulation or support or kindness. And so that's that tender yin side of self-compassion. And when we are ready and resourced, we can start trying to make changes. We can take action. And they both work together so beautifully, because it's not like we wait until our resilience and our emotional readiness meter is filled up to 100%. Life just doesn't work that way. And as humans, we don't work that way. We are constantly in change and we're constantly imperfect. And that's where self-compassion can help remind us of that fact and say, hey, it might not be perfect, but I can still try, right? I can do something. And I can hold myself with compassion, kindness, and give myself grace if it doesn't work on the first try, or if it doesn't provide me the relief that I want right away, or whatever it is, whatever happens, I can still be okay with who I am and my imperfections, my humanity. This is how and why it can be so much more motivating and so much more helpful than the kind of inner critic that so many of us end up listening to. If I don't do it perfectly right out of the gate, why even bother? Or I don't know how to start, why even try? Or it's all so-and-so's fault, or the system's rigged against me. Whatever excuses or inner judges and inner voices that we might be listening to, if we can listen to our higher wisdom and listen to our inner self-compassionate voice, that is the one that always has our best interests in mind. And so we learn to do things and take action and try those first baby steps, not because we are failing or we are a drunken wreck or any of the kind of belittling, berating, diminishing insults that we can hurl at ourselves. We take those first steps, we do those first actions because we care and we don't want to suffer anymore. And that kind of gets me back full circle to where I was originally. I was suffering greatly and deeply, and I didn't want to anymore. And so with that fierce energy, we can start to make those baby steps and start to make the changes. And once we do, we start to feel a little bit better. And that then motivates us. And then that pushes the wheel or the pedal that much further along. And so we continue to take the steps and we continue to put in the effort little by little. And when we make mistakes, We don't beat ourselves up about it, and we don't give up and feel like we're failing, because we know we're human and we're going to make mistakes, and it's all part of it. And we just keep going. We keep offering ourselves that kindness and that support, and push ourselves to try a little bit harder, to do a little bit better, because we know we're capable of it. We know that anything's possible when we try, when we believe in ourselves, when we really have our own back. And to me, that is why self-compassion is so incredibly powerful and amazing. And it really can provide such an inspiring lens with which to view change and ways of interacting and relating to ourselves. Very recently, in another kind of personal example, I was talking with my husband about this great idea that I have for my business. And it's been in the back of my mind basically since I launched my business 2 years ago. And as we were talking, the thing that I took away from it was that I need to stop talking about it and letting it sit in the back of my mind and waiting for it to magically fall in my lap, and actually do something about it. I have even identified next small steps, things I can do. I just need to do them. And talking to him helped me to see that I had these limiting beliefs. I was holding myself back. I was making excuses in these half-assed ways. And having another person really helped open up my eyes, open up my perspective a little bit, to say, if you want this to happen, you gotta do the work. You gotta actually do something. Take action to make it happen. It's not just gonna fall in your lap. And that has been my experience over and over again in life. I think it's really important to believe in myself and believe in my skills and believe in the universe and manifest and visualize all of these beautiful, energetic aspects of bringing it into being. But I have to actually put in the work. If I want something to happen in my life, I need to make it happen. I need to take the steps. And so it was just a really good reminder. And I will say too, it didn't feel necessarily good at the time. I cried. I was a little upset. There was a little part of me that was like, but it's hard and I don't know what to do and I'm unsure of myself. But I could recognize that and realize that and acknowledge that voice, and also listen to the other part of me that was reminding me, we have done so many much, much harder things. We can do this. This is no thing. You got this. And it could be so worth it. All of those really hard things that were scary and I was unsure of and didn't have much confidence, that little voice has been proven wrong again and again. We can do hard things. We can do whatever it is that we put our minds to if we really, truly want to. And if we can recognize that fierce energy as part of us, as a legitimate, exciting, validating, vital component of becoming the best version of ourselves that we can be. So for today's takeaway, I did pull out Dr. Neff's Fierce Self-Compassion book. And before I got too far into the weeds of it, I did find something that I think will be a great takeaway for today's episode. And this is the motivating self-compassion break. We're going to use this fierce energy to think about something that we want to change in our lives. So please choose something to work with that isn't too overwhelming. We don't want to pick anything that is too painful or too overwhelming. And we also don't want to pick something that is something that we cannot change. So don't pick like, I wish my feet were smaller or something like that. We want to think of some things that we wish we could change in our lives and we struggle with. Maybe you want to exercise more, but it's really hard. Or maybe you want to start meditating in the morning. Or maybe you simply want to learn how to talk to yourself a little bit more kindly or gently. Think of something that you would like to change, something that you would like to do. And once you have that in mind, we are going to offer the 3 phrases of self-compassion. So the first phrase brings in mindfulness so that you have a clear vision of what needs to change. So you can say it slowly and with conviction. This is my vision of what I want for myself. I want to meditate every morning, or I want to exercise at least 3 times a week. You can remind yourself that this is possible for me. And then the second phrase calls upon the wisdom of common humanity. So we want to remember that everyone gets stuck or gets things wrong. We don't get it all perfect as soon as we start, but we can learn from our experience. So say to yourself, this is a learning opportunity, or growing pains are part of being human. I'm not the only one who has faced a challenge like this in life. And then the last phrase, we're going to also offer ourselves a supportive gesture. You can put your hand on your heart. You could make a fist of, I can do this. But we want to encourage ourselves. We want to use kindness to support ourselves, to make these changes, not because we're inadequate or we're a failure, but because we want to alleviate our suffering. So we can say, I want to help myself reach my goals. Or simply, I have my back. I can do this. Yes, I can. Just try your best and see what happens. So if you find this difficult, if you find finding the words that resonate with you difficult, you can again think of a friend who is in a similar situation. What would you say to them? What would you encourage them with? And then finally, we want to allow that fierce energy of encouraging wise vision to combine with the tender energy of unconditional self-acceptance. So we can try our best to make these changes, to reach our goals, but understand and remember it's okay to be imperfect. We all are. That's never going to change. But we can try to improve. We can try to make things better because we care and we want to continue to improve and grow and heal, but also understand that it's a never-ending process, that there's always going to be setbacks, there's always going to be hiccups. And this is where I come in. Sometimes we need support. Even in that example that I gave earlier of talking to my husband, was kind of the gentle nudge and the little push I needed to see where I was holding myself back. Without that, I think I probably could have just continued down this path of inaction for who knows how long. Sometimes we need an outside perspective. Sometimes we need some help to broaden our perspective or to remind us that we are trying, we are doing our best, help us to celebrate our successes and to see how and where we can learn from our mistakes, to see them as learning opportunities. And that is all of the things that I do for my individual clients. So if you are at all curious, interested, or motivated to see where this kind of fierce energy might take you, please do reach out. I am accepting individual clients right now, and you can find all of my contact information in the show notes. I hope I have given you a little food for thought in today's episode. I wonder if you can look at your own life and think about different times when you have harnessed that fierce energy, even if you might not have recognized or realized that's what you were doing. I think anyone who is a mother has had that experience of just finding a way to carry another human being to term inside your body and then giving birth is all kinds of mama bear energy. But again, if you are like me, a woman living in Japan and having done that in another country, in another language, with all of these different cultural norms and everything, that's so incredibly difficult. Even moving to another country, finding a way to do all of the things that you need to do to get you to Japan is a huge, colossal achievement and a huge change, a huge step, a huge thing. Maybe also give yourself a moment as this episode ends to think about, where has the mama bear energy manifested itself in your life? What were you able to do because of that gentle nudge from within? I would love to hear if you have any thoughts or any feedback about any of it. Until next time, thank you so very much for listening, and take care.